You can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
The source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the province.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high, a lot of things.
State of MedTech with your host, Omar and Khateeb. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Another exciting startup to share with you guys today, and that is Sayenza Bio. The founder and CEO is Derek Banyard, who's a physician who I met at the AdMed conference. We had a great conversation, and it's a very interesting company because, I think this idea of regenerative medicine has taken a lot of traction in the last few years. And more specifically, we hear a lot about stem cells, right? What you probably don't know is that fat is actually the largest source of regenerative cells in your body, right? Which is very surprising to hear. And so how does Sayenza, what's their unique value prop here? Well, so Sayenza is a leading clinical stage biotech company that's really focused on improving patient lives. Fat, or they like to call the power of fat, which again, largest source of regenerative cells in the body for limitless aesthetic and regenerative medicine applications. Dr. Banyard's focus first is essentially using what's called liquid gold, right? These fat cells, first in the aesthetic area, but you'll see in the interview that one other area that a lot of this is also starting to be used in is in orthopedics. So I think that their main beachhead, if you want to talk about it from an investment standpoint, is aesthetic medicine. But then after that, their company is able to expand into a variety of different areas. They are a doctor-driven team. Have a great clinical team behind them that essentially is going to unite cutting-edge scientific innovation with a lot of commercial expertise. So now let me tell you a little bit more about Dr. Banyard. So Dr. Banyard is a surgeon and an internationally acclaimed adipose cell stem cell researcher, and this is what I love. I love founder-led companies where the founder has deep clinical expertise, even research-based expertise in a certain area. He left plastic surgery residency. So that's the other thing that's really impressive, is that Dr. Banyard was in plastic surgery residency, decided to leave about halfway through to found Sayenza Biosciences, and has been recognized with several grants and awards. He's the former chief scientist at the Center for Tissue Engineering at UC Irvine, where his early research earned him a coveted regenerative medicine training grant from the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine, as well as the National Endowment for Plastic Surgery grant from the Plastic Surgery Foundation. He has also co-authored over 100 abstracts, posters, and publications. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that the purpose of these episodes is that I want to give early stage companies and founders their opportunity to reach more people, because at this stage, they don't have millions of dollars worth of funding that they can afford PR and marketing. So this is one way that I'm able to try and give back to the startup ecosystem. I mention this because if you're a startup founder, even if you're pre-Series A, you're early stage and everything, and you have a great story and product, please reach out to me via LinkedIn or through email. Pitch me your story. We get a lot of these, and so I'm doing my best. This is why we claim that we're the number one show. We publish 3 times a week, and part of that is to get through as many founders as possible. We create clips for you and really help promote you. And for those who are investors, if you're interested to learn more about Derek and his company, you can you can go to his company website, which is sayenza.com. SAYENZA.com, or just look Derek up on LinkedIn. So with that being said, before we jump into our episode, I want to give a quick shout out to one of our partners, which is Alpha Sophia. When it comes to finding early adopters, data is really your best friend. The problem with a lot of databases these days, especially for early stage companies, is that they do cost a lot of money, and sometimes they're a little difficult to use. Some of those databases that provide commercial intelligence for physician procedures, prescribing behaviors, they are fantastic, and I'm a fan of them. The problem is that they're just cost prohibitive for early stage founders. That's where Alpha Sophia can be a great partner for you. They have fantastic data on procedure volume, prescription behaviors. They even tie in, which has been helpful for me, for some of the clients that I help, which is to also tie in a physician's LinkedIn and Twitter accounts and Doximity accounts. That way you can find people who are active online. If you're interested to learn more about Alpha Sophia, go to alphasophia.com/Omar and you get 3 free searches and reports through them along with a demo. And if you decide you want to use them, they have great price transparency. Whether you're a big company or an early stage startup, they only cost $300 a month. And that's a price that everybody can afford while you're trying to get traction early on. So go to alphasophia.com/Omar to learn more. And now let's get into our episode with Dr. Derek Banyard of Sayenza. Enjoy. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. And I'm joined by another great founder. One of my favorite things about the show is finding great founders and companies at an early stage, having them on the show to kind of talk about their products. And today we have Dr. Derek Banyard, who's joining us, who's the CEO and founder of Sayenza Biosciences. And the tagline for them is that they're essentially automating the process of fat tissue to create injectable stem cells for essentially regenerative medicine, which is a fascinating area. For me, I think it's really exciting because, one thing that's kind of brought a new wave of investors into the medtech space are the ones who are into like regenerative medicine, longevity, et cetera. And so it's a really interesting topic. Not a lot of people cover it. And so, Dr. Banyard, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Now, you and I met at like AdMed, and the thing that kind of stood out to me is that you're a practicing physician right now. You're a family man. You have wife and kid. And then you're a founder, which is just really impressive. And I think some of the great founders in our industry were very much like you were. They were practicing clinicians and then decide to like go full on entrepreneur. So before we kind of talk about the company and the market, why don't you give us a little bit of background on you? Like where'd you grow up? Where'd you get where'd you go to medical school and your training? And we'll kind of get to the company in a moment.
Sure. So I currently live in Orange County, California. I'm originally from Virginia Beach, Virginia. I went to the University of Virginia for undergrad. After undergrad, I went to Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee. While I was at Meharry, I was the first student to do a joint MD MBA program with Vanderbilt University. So in 5 years, I got my MD and my MBA. After that stretch, I went to Maryland to do a research fellowship in cell biology and immunology in their ENT surgery department. So spent a few years there, then ended up in general surgery. First year was in West Virginia. My second year was in Loma Linda, California, which is what brought me to Cali.
That's amazing. And actually, so general surgery residencies, no, my dad's a general surgeon. That's a tough residency to go through. But really interestingly enough, like I think isn't Loma Linda one of the blue zones where people like live the longest in the world? So that's kind of funny that you founded a regenerative medicine company and like you trained in Loma Linda.
Well, an interesting thing about that is, it's not only is it a blue zone, it's a very heavy Seventh-day Adventist and a Seventh-day Adventist.
Yeah, that's right.
So when you're working, 20-hour shifts and in the ICU, it's really hard to find coffee. So it makes it for an interesting.
That's right. That's right. You don't drink coffee. Yeah, that's tough, man. So, you're finishing residency. When did you finish residency?
Well, so my story is kind of long and winding. After that second year of general surgery, I decided I wanted to pursue plastic surgery. And I needed a little bit more ammo on my CV to get there. So I applied for a couple of research fellowships and was offered one at UCLA that was paid and one that was unpaid at UC Irvine. But I saw the opportunity at UC Irvine, so I went for the unpaid fellowship. And for a year and a half, I was doing research in their Center for Tissue Engineering lab without any income. And did that for several years, got some grants, and long story short, I ended up getting a master's in biomedical and translational sciences, did a thesis, got some grant money, did a bunch of work, and then I matched into plastic surgery at UC Irvine.
Nice. So at what point did you decide like you want to start a company? Like how did this all come about?
Well, it was always in the back of my mind. My dad is an entrepreneur. And obviously, I had the foresight to get my MBA while I was in medical school, because they don't teach us business in medical school at all.
Definitely not. I can confirm that.
Yeah. But, secondarily, I've always done research. It's always been of interest to me, but it wasn't until I got to UC Irvine and started working under Dr. Alan Widgerow, who runs the Center for Tissue Engineering Lab. I mean, he's just an innovative thinker. He brought a business approach to doing research. And so we were just starting this lab up together, essentially. I mean, he was there about a year before me. He came with a premise that, we start projects, multiple projects, and if there's no returns after 18 months, we go on to the next project. But he treated it like a business enterprise. And the idea was to innovate and develop intellectual property. And obviously the next thing is to go from benchtop to bedside, right? I've been in several research labs where you do iterative research that goes nowhere for 10 years. And I was very intrigued by the idea of really developing solutions that could be scalable and have exponential impact.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's good I think as a physician and especially even as an entrepreneur, like you, we're really influenced a lot by our mentors. And so it's great that you actually worked out of a lab like that. So after getting that kind of experience, how did that translate into you deciding to start like your own company? Because it's a big undertaking, let alone even if you have an MBA as a physician, like, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's very difficult. It's not easy at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. Like this was a COVID startup, if you will. I was, finishing up my second year of residency and working 100-hour weeks. I had a 6-month-old and an 18-month-old. My wife is a full-time physician, and I never got to see my family. And then it was a kind of a snowball effect of like COVID just completely flipping healthcare on its head. And I've always tried to live life where I've got, the ability to pivot. So, I developed this intellectual property starting, I started doing this research in 2013, but, really was developing this intellectual property at the Center for Tissue Engineering Lab before I joined residency, and always had it as a potential fallback or pivot in the event that the clinical duties of plastic surgery wasn't going to be a long-term goal. And so it was a perfect storm of the stress and hours of being a healthcare provider in the peak of COVID, and not seeing my family, versus the opportunity to really pursue something that could offer, exponential clinical benefit beyond direct person-to-person care that you can provide, but also the opportunity to like spend more time with my family.
Got it. Yeah, no, I completely appreciate it. I think this is the big thing these days. I don't know if it was COVID or something, but you start to really think about your quality of life. And I'm all about like working hard, but let's face it, like our kids, they're only little kids once, right? And so I think it's really commendable that you decide to do that. But going on the entrepreneurship route is definitely not easy. So how did you go from essentially the concept like within a lab to, now you guys are, where are you guys at in terms of your regulatory pathway and the commercial pathway?
Sure. So we received a grant from the Plastic Surgery Foundation and an additional grant from the NIH to essentially commercialize technology that would automate the processing of fat for essentially regenerative medicine therapeutics, stem cell therapeutics. And so myself and my two co-founders, one I've already mentioned, Alan Widgerow, he's the head of the Center for Tissue Engineering at UC Irvine. He's a retired plastic surgeon and just an innovator across the board when it comes to translational science. My other co-founder is Jared Hahn. He is professor of biomedical engineering at UC Irvine. He's an expert in microfluidics and tissue dissociation. And he is an expert in developing labs on a chip. So he's got several ideas and concepts that allow for the dissociation of tissue into single cells. And we decided to lean on his expertise to create labs on a chip for the dissociation of fat. And so together, the three of us, we developed a series of chips that could be connected in series with and powered by peristaltic pumps. Early on, it was syringe pumps. But to date, we've got a full working prototype that is a series of labs on chip that are powered by peristaltic pumps. And we're, producing tremendous results. We just published our second publication in Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery, which is the largest journal for plastic surgery, this past January, demonstrating the value of our platform in terms of cell viability cell count, and the enrichment of specific regenerative cell populations, stem cell populations that contribute to wound healing and tissue regeneration. Earlier this year, we raised some money and we began the engineering process of building our MVP. And so that's a 3-phase MVP build. We've gotten through the first phase. So we've designed the platform and now we're raising money to build it.
Fantastic. So we can kind of like walk through the science. So like your target, your beachhead is plastic surgeons. They're the ones like their number one procedure that every single one of them do is liposuction. And so essentially the product, or I guess the variable that you need for your platform is harvested by these people all the time. So if you're a plastic surgeon, let's say you do some liposuction, you harvest some fat. What's the process? Like, how does it essentially move through your platform? And what is it that about your platform in Sayenza that's unique and different compared to anything else that might be out there?
Right. So that's the key differentiator of our platform. It's a completely hands-off system. Our a plastic surgeon's current setup or workflow will fit seamlessly in line with our platform. So they can use their current liposuction machine and hook it directly into our platform. Our platform will begin processing fat as soon as 100 cc's of fat hits the canister, and it will continuously process the fat in an automated fashion. So completely hands-off, unlike any other platform out there. Secondarily, well, there's multiple...
Are there other platforms where they need to be more hands-on?
So right now the market leader is Revolve, which is an AbbVie Allergan product. It's limited in the volume that can be processed, about 250 to 300 cc's of fat. Once the fat goes into the system, they call it closed loop because the fat goes into this canister. But once the fat is in the canister, then you got to literally turn it with a hand crank, add saline, turn it with the hand crank, and then extract the fat. And you have to do that multiple times over, depending on how much fat you want. So if you want a liter of fat, you got to go through that process 3 times, and that could take up to an hour just there. One of the newer competitors in the space is Viality by Sientra. Now one of their advantages is you can process almost up to a liter, but it still requires the surgeon to open the top of the platform and pour in essentially a chemical, if you will, and stir the fat so that it does this reaction. So again, a lot of user input, and this one's not a closed system. The majority of surgeons don't do their own processing. They'll have a nurse.
Real quick, just to interrupt, I want to point out, especially for the investors who are listening, the importance about it being a closed system is that once it becomes an open system, you introduce the risk of infection and contamination, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
Or contamination that can lead to infection, or
exactly.
You can damage the quality of the cells. So sorry. So you were saying, I was going to say, I was like, the surgeon's not going to be doing this. They're going to have like a PA, a nurse, like somebody assisting who's going to be doing this, right?
Yeah. I mean, so some surgeons are meticulous. They want to do everything, but I'd probably say, 2/3 of surgeons don't do the processing. They'll have their assistant do the processing while they're doing other things. But if you think about it, it's much more difficult these days to retain OR staff, nurses, PAs, etc. And so if you can decrease the amount of manpower needed in the OR, you've already decreased your overhead. The additional benefits of our system is that it's large volume. It can process up to a liter at a time. And an additional benefit is that it's equipped with a fat reinjector. And so, for instance, liposuction is the number one procedure performed by plastic surgeons. And one of the key drivers of that adoption is the demand for the Brazilian butt lift. Surgeons I talk to, they're injecting anywhere from 400 cc's to a liter of cc's per buttock. And the average surgeon is using a 60 cc syringe to do that. So you can imagine the back and forth of loading fat into syringes to inject a liter of fat. It's very time consuming and labor intensive. And so our fat will allow for the automated delivery of the fat back into the desired body location with the control of a foot pedal and a pressure sensor.
So I just want to, essentially, old way or current competitors is that it's either an open closed loop system, but even with the closed system, like there's manual work that needs to be done. It's very cumbersome just to get even close to a liter. Would you guys have essentially it works into their current life? So essentially, if somebody's performing liposuction, the fat goes into your platform, it's processed in some specific way, and then they're able to just turn around and automatically, I guess it's in an automated fashion, put it back in, which essentially you're decreasing a lot of time in the OR, like loading those syringes. Because I've seen some of these procedures done. So you're essentially just this is a you're a biotech company that's essentially solving a workflow issue. It sounds like
we're solving a workflow issue, but we're also producing the highest quality fat graft on the market.
How are you able to do that? Like, I mean, I don't want to make you share like trade secrets, but like how are you able to do that?
Yeah. So one way that we do it, our cartridge, our disposable cartridge, has different components, and one is our preparation device, which is a proprietary lab on chip that coupled with washing and flow algorithms washes the fat in a hands-off way that is faster than anything on the market. Most surgeons will do like gravity separation, or they'll use like a kitchen strainer or something like that. So that's the
right. It sounds like you've taken like, because like if you look at how immunology labs are run and everything, like with flow cytometry and PCR and all these different things, you're taking sort of that sort of tech and bringing it into like liposuction. Because it sounds like all the other ones, it's either like this like manual thing of cranking something or putting some like reagent in, but then you've kind of exposed it to a contaminant. So
that's point number one. Point number two, though, is a very important concept known as cell-assisted lipotransfer.
Okay.
So back, I don't remember how long ago, but there's a famous surgeon from Japan named Yoshimura. And what he found was that if you take fat and inject it, anywhere from 20 to 80% of that fat's going to just disappear. But if you take stem cells from that fat and add it to the fat when you inject it, you're going to approach 80% retention of that fat every time. And so that concept was coined cell-assisted lipotransfer. And our platform not only produces the highest quality fat, but it also creates a stem cell therapeutic that is combined with the fat before it's re-injected, such that you're going to get that predicted 80% retention every time, which means fewer surgeries for the patient. Because I talk to surgeons now and they say, I tell patients if they really want that desired body contour effect, I might have to bring them back 2, 3, 4 times for repeat procedures. If you can decrease those 2, 3, 4 times to 1 or 2 times, you're saving the surgeon's money and you're making for increased safety for the patient because they have decreased anesthesia.
Interesting. Why would it be decreased anesthesia? Just because of the length of the surgery?
Length of surgery, fewer surgeries.
So let's look at like the Brazilian butt lift or BBL. Okay. On average, that procedure usually, like just rough average conservative, it takes like an hour to do. How long would you say it does?
No, I mean, I don't personally do BBLs, but I would say it's at least 3 to 4 hours.
3 to 4 hours. Okay.
Because you're harvesting a lot of fat that's going to take probably an hour at least, and then you're processing the fat, and then you're re-injecting the fat. You got to turn the patient over on the table. Like it's a lot of steps.
The part that takes the most time, I would imagine, is the processing of the fat and then injecting the fat. Correct?
I'm not the expert to be able to say. Again, like the lipo could take an hour, maybe more. The processing could take an hour. And again, if you have an assistant doing it, they're probably doing it while you're doing more lipo or doing some other kind of tightening procedure. But then they have to flip the patient over. That takes probably 30 minutes.
Right.
And then the injection, depending on how they're re-injecting. I know some surgeons who are doing off-label using their Klein pump, which is the pump used for infiltration of tumescent solution. They're reversing it and using it to re-inject the fat.
Oh, that's dangerous. Throw a clot down, right?
I mean, it's off-label. It's as safe as the surgeon who's doing it and understands the risks that they are partaking in. But we're trying to create something that is FDA approved for that indication, so that there's a lower risk of using something off-label for the reinjection. But we want to be an end-to-end fat processing company. So we are looking at innovating in the liposuction cannula space to decrease the amount of time it takes to do the lipo. We're going to innovate in the processing of fat to decrease the time there, and we're going to innovate in the delivery space. So we're trying to be end to end and make sure that we are addressing all the pain points for that plastic surgeon.
Right now, you guys are a platform that goes in the middle between the liposuction and harvesting part, and then the injection part. Right now, that's like the the foundation of the company. Once you're there, then, you know, when you get more an influx of capital, you get more established in the market, you either go up one end to develop like better tools for the liposuction, and then on the other end for the injection. Because, you know, now that you guys are, it's essentially going into your platform and then you inject directly from there. So you're going to have your own hardware for that, right?
100%. Yeah. And
are you what about, are you platform agnostic right now? So, because like the one thing I would think of is like, is plastic surgeons saying, well, the liposuction tools that I currently use, I love those and I don't want to switch. So are they able to just use those tools and plug into your platform, or how does that work?
Yeah, any current setup will work with our platform, but we're going to create additional tools that are optimized for our platform, and in theory will speed the harvesting part, which, you know, I've just got through doing the NSF I-Core, where we were required to interview 100 stakeholders, and one of the surprising points that came up during my interviews of plastic surgeons was they have a lot of pain when it comes to the actual liposuction, because it's labor intensive to go back and forth with the cannulas harvesting the fat, and different size cannulas are used. So you can harvest fat quicker if you use a 5mm cannula versus a 3mm cannula, but the quality of the fat from a 5mm cannula isn't as good for reinjection. So there's just a lot of variables.
You're harvesting like larger amounts of fat. Oh, interesting. So you kind of, it's like either you want to have you want to be more like efficient with the harvesting, but then the quality is not going to be that good, or you have to manually like break it down more.
Yeah. And so, and I don't want to get too in the weeds, but, you know, I am considered an international expert in fat processing, fat stem cells. And I was at the IFATS meeting in Washington, D.C., the International Federation of Adipose Tissue and Science. And, you know, a topic that has come to the forefront is this concept of nano versus milli versus macro fat. And a lot of the leading regenerative surgeons and fat grafting surgeons lean towards this milli fat, which is a parcel size of 1.2 to 2.4 millimeters. So this is the highest quality fat for fat grafting. But to get that, it requires slower harvesting techniques and more meticulous processing. And so we really want to be at that forefront of optimizing these different nano, milli, and macro to create the best possible fat grafts. But the other thing that I'd be remiss not to mention is we're not just optimizing for plastic surgeons, which is our beachhead market. There's a current movement in the regenerative medicine space, specifically in ortho, pain, and rehab. And so one of our biggest competitors is in the ortho market in a phase 3 clinical trial treating knees for knee osteoarthritis and getting tremendous results.
Really? So, using stem cells via fat?
Correct.
Where are they harvesting it from?
Well, technically they're not injecting stem cells. They're injecting microfragmented fat. And so that's what we're creating is microfragmented fat.
I love these little loopholes with the FDA. It's like, well, not stem cells, micro fat.
Yeah, so our device produces microfragmented fat. We're calling it NSVF. And that microfragmented fat can be injected similarly for the treatment of knee pain.
Could you hypothetically, so let me just be like very, like, you know, open about my medical history. So, you know, I work out, I do jujitsu. And so like I got a tiny bit of a shoulder injury. I think I'm fine now, but let's just say that didn't get better. Hypothetically, like, you know, as your platform advances in its product development and everything, could I go to an orthopedic surgeon where they essentially use your platform to harvest some fat and then re-inject it in, kind of like PRP almost?
100%. So if you do a little digging, you'll see that at these interventional orthopedic meetings and pain meetings, they now have sections of their meetings that are dedicated to teaching orthos and pain doctors to do liposuction, because fat is about to be the new trend.
I believe it. It makes sense too, because right now, I'll tell you like something, you know, so kind of like what happened with, you know, so 20 years ago, the people who had like all the power was cardiothoracic surgeons. Now it's really interventional cardiologists, right? Because they just stole a lot of those procedures. And you see this in medicine, like these wars between specialties. General surgery just got obliterated the last 20, 30 years. Just, you know, everybody picked all the, you know, cash producing procedures. Now with ortho and pain management are kind of like starting to compete, because you're starting to have pain physicians do procedures like SI bone fusions, even like in an outpatient setting. And so I feel like there's this rush to not only own the patient on the procedure side, but also on the like recovery side. And that's where like I feel like there's all of a sudden like regenerative medicine is starting to like come up more and more like in the ortho and pain world. So that's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, 100%. And it's going to be we're ways off in terms of enough evidence to really support it, but the anecdotal evidence is tremendous, and the data that our competitor is putting out, they've published multiple publications. It's mostly like pain scale and functional scale ratings, but there's no question. There was a review paper that came out right after the pandemic because there was, a pause on elective surgeries. And so the purpose of the study was to explore whether the use of fat and microfragmented fat and fat stem cells for the treatment of knees could obviate the need for knee replacement. And what they found was, yes, it reduced pain, improved function, and reduced the need for knee replacement for up to 2 years. Like, we're never going to eliminate the need for knee replacements, but we're going to decrease the demand for knee replacements using fat stem cells. And there are now CPT codes for the treatment of knee osteoarthritis and shoulder pain, not yet endorsed or adopted by Medicare and Medicaid, but it's on the horizon.
So this is fascinating here. So like in your company is very interesting in the sense that it's kind of like part biotech, part med device company. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Now the more interesting question is, do you see that do you think you're a biotech company who happens to have a med device, or do you think you're a med device company who happens to have a biotech product?
That's a good question. Because, I'm a scientist, I'd probably say I'm a biotech company. Like, we're doing so much science in the labs. A lot of our competitors are just putting out devices. A lot of our competitors are just putting out devices and saying, this is our device.
And I mean, because like, look, like in terms on the lab, like lab size and science, like the fact that you guys you have like, you use the word chip, and you guys have a very specific process where the fat is rendered without doing it manually. Like, it just goes into your system and that's it. Is fascinating. I think that's really interesting too, just because I don't know, I love the space, but I feel like the industry gets better when tech or biotech or pharma starts to move into it, because then you start to see this like collision of ideas and innovations that like you normally wouldn't have seen, So like, I mean, I don't know. I think like if you look at surgical robotics, because tech has moved in, we've seen more robotic systems incorporate things like computer vision and better software and everything as a result of that, So let me ask you, talk to us a little bit about the market side. So like, for an investor who's listening to this, what makes this so from a clinical standpoint, as long as everything checks out and you go through your regulatory pathway, it makes a lot of sense clinically, right? What's your I guess response to investors who might ask, like, what makes this a good investment product?
Right. So, I mean, our go-to-market is aesthetics, and so that's a cash-based market. Based on our math, it's a $6.25 billion market, and we believe we're building a need to have for plastic surgeons. If you go into 10 different plastic surgeons clinics, you're going to see 10 different tools being used to process fat. This device is going to replace all those tools for every surgeon because of the reproducibility, the time savings, and the automation that can reduce the manpower. It'll also allow the surgeons to do more surgeries and therefore generate more revenue. And so, just from that go-to-market standpoint of that $6.25 billion aesthetics market that's cash-based, it's de-risked from that standpoint. But secondarily, that pain ortho rehab market is huge. And I already mentioned that there's CPT codes established for the treatment of knees and shoulders, et cetera. As soon as Medicare and Medicaid start reimbursing for those procedures, the business just prints cash. So, it's really about...
And just something I want to touch on, just because I don't know, because of how I think it's great to get those CPT codes and everything, but I'll tell you, there's something happening. Maybe this is me anecdotally seeing it, but I feel like there's something happening in American healthcare where more people, and not rich people, just regular people, are willing to go just pay out of pocket cash for healthcare, because like, it's either I don't want to wait for it, I want to go get the healthcare that I want, everything. So they're just more than willing to do it. And there's even some banks and stuff and like really interesting financing options for this, So I like the fact that it starts off like from a cash-based system versus the problem I think with a lot of med tech or biotech is like it's so reliant on a CPT code, and it's just like it's a rough journey when it's that case.
Yeah, I mean, we're still in the early days of this. So, I've met several surgeons who have people who are very willing to pay cash for these types of procedures. But, one can't overstate the benefit of we're an aging and obese society. Everyone's going to get arthritis, and not everyone can afford, a $2,000, $5,000 procedure. And I think it's very important that, we're a science-based company and we're generating that science to support the use of the therapeutic generated by our device for indications like pain, for indications like arthritis. But once you've established that, it becomes a no-brainer. I've interviewed a lot of pain doctors and orthopedic doctors, and they are consistently using PRP because there's a lot of data on PRP. It's mixed data, but there's data. And so it's a lot easier in their minds to justify telling a patient, yeah, you pay out of pocket for this because it's not going to be reimbursed. And the reason it's not being reimbursed is because the data is mixed. But they have that peace of mind. So we really got to generate the data to convince the interventionalists that it's worthwhile. But ultimately, if we can convince society and the government that there's true benefit and it's going to reduce morbidity at a much lower cost than the cost of surgery, that's when you hit unicorn status.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What are, when you, so if everything goes to plan with your regulatory pathway, when do you foresee yourself being like fully commercial?
Yeah, so I think realistically, we'll have our first working devices in Q4 of 24, but probably rolling out commercially Q1 of 25.
Got it. And at that point, like, it might be early to ask. I don't think it's too early to ask this, but like, what's your pricing strategy for these products? Are you going to price them competitively? Are they going to be at a premium where they're like, how do you look at, like, how are you thinking about pricing for this?
Yeah, so we're thinking about several strategies. For the busy plastic surgeon who's doing everything, he's doing mommy makeovers and doing a lot of lipo and a lot of volumization. That surgeon is going to pay an upfront capital cost for the platform of about $50,000. And then they're going to pay anywhere from $400 to $600 per consumable, and that consumable is per patient. And that's in line with, a lot of our competitors, Revolve, the Biotechs of the world. That's about what they charge for their disposable. For like our pain and ortho docs, they don't need all the bells and whistles of a big, large volume transfer machine. And so they might get the device for free and just sign up for, a subscription type plan where they commit to so many consumables per month.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't want the price of our platform to be an impediment to adoption.
Yeah. So it sounds like, and this is where I guess the med device component comes in, which is like your goal is to get to is to place as many as you can so you can get that consumable. So like right now, like your goal, at least with the plastic surgeons, is to hit that $50,000 price point for the capital equipment. But that's like a scale that you're willing to like move around just for placing. Are you guys going to do like a limited market release with certain sites in the coming year at all? Do you already have some of your sites in terms of who's going to like help with, clinical studies and development?
Yeah. So our go-to-market strategy is to have 30 centers of excellence at the time of launch. And we're already a third of the way there. We've already recruited 10 surgeons to kind of be those early
10 different
centers of excellence.
Yeah, so you have 10 surgeons that like you don't have like two in one place and two another. They're all at 10 different locations.
Well, I would say that we have 10 total surgeons recruited. There's a couple that are dual practice. Okay. But we want to have at least 30 surgeons actively using our platform. It may not be quite.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, got it. And so you guys already have 10. So that's good. That's fantastic. And how did you go about finding them? Like, what did you guys find them on LinkedIn, conferences? What'd you guys use?
So like I said, I speak a lot on the topic. So I go to a lot of the conferences, and I'm presenting on our science and our platform. And usually people come up to me at the end, just really excited, really interested in what we're developing. But because I'm was in the plastic surgery space as a trainee, and I would speak at conferences frequently. I have a huge network of plastic surgeons. I also happen to run a nonprofit that keeps me very connected to the plastic surgery space. So I'm always at Plastic Surgery the Meeting, which is the largest plastic surgery meeting in the world. And I'm known for my research and for my work in the field. And so it's much easier to have the conversation with plastic surgeons, knowing that I too am a surgeon and really understand the pain points. But really, it's just about taking them through the science and what we're developing, and them acknowledging that, yeah, this seems like a need to have, and they want to be early to the punch. Nice.
That's fantastic. And then, kind of last thing I want to ask before we wrap up, like right now, what round are you, how much have you guys raised so far? What are you trying to raise right now? And then what are you going to do with that money?
Yeah, so we are raising a $3.5 million round. My goal is to get to 2.5 million by Q1, Q2 of next year. We've raised about 750,000.
Got it.
Primarily going after angels.
You raised any capital previously?
Yeah, we raised a 350,000 pre-seed round in Q1 of this year.
Got it. So this would be like a Series A for you that you're going for?
We're calling it a seed.
Oh, seed. Okay.
Yeah, and it's on a safe note. So we don't plan to do a priced round until our Series A.
Got it. Fantastic. And when you do that raise of like 2.5 mil by Q1, Q2 of this coming year, what's most of that money going to be used for?
To produce that first device. That first device is going to cost over $1 million to build, but each successive device is going to cost about $7,500. So primarily it's going to be going to building that device, making some key hires, and ushering through the FDA.
Got it. When you build a device like that, I don't know much on the biotech side, but like, is it more feasible and better to do it overseas? Like, if so, like, is there a specific country or area that it's best to do this in, or not really?
We plan to build our device in North America. I don't want to be subject to any kind of, shipping bottlenecks or international tariff issues that could quickly spiral out of control given the current geopolitical climate. So we're working with Omnica, which is one of California's largest and most respected design and manufacturing firms, and they have incredible relationships with component manufacturers up and down the coast. So we plan to keep it at least in this hemisphere, if not in this country.
Yeah, I think that's a like wise thing to do, especially considering the geopolitical climate right now. It's just like way too risky, and I think a lot of people, have not forgotten like the issues that we went through from a supply chain standpoint of COVID. Yeah. So, but fantastic. Well, Dr. Banyard, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Where, for those who are interested, I want to mention that you can learn more at Sayenza.com. That's SAYENZA.com. But also you're becoming more active on LinkedIn, and I've been following your updates, so I know they can find you on there as well.
Yeah, for sure. We're on all the socials for the most part, except for TikTok. But yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, and we're on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all that jazz.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And for all those listening, this is another episode of the State of MedTech. Be sure to subscribe to us. And if you're interested in hearing more about the company, feel free to reach out to me. Follow Dr. Banyard on LinkedIn as well. That being said, I hope you have a wonderful evening, and be sure to subscribe and give the show 5 stars as always. We're the #1 show in 2023 for a reason. We're going to carry that over into 2024, so we really appreciate that from all our listeners. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for enjoying another epic episode of the State of MedTech. If you're feeling inspired and love this episode, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you never miss an episode. And be sure to give us 5 stars and write a short review, because that helps more people discover this amazing community of ours. If you're a company who has a executive that you'd like to be on the show, or perhaps you want to sponsor one of the episodes, shoot us an email at hello@khateebandco.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time.